I seriously can't believe I'm actually holding this camera in my hands right now. I remember the first time I even thought of an A7S III was right after the A7 III came out in 2018. I was at NAB and I asked the Sony rep, so when can we expect an A7S III? He gave me kind of a suspicious smile and he said, I know nothing. Literally thought that an A7S III would be released that year, but boy was I wrong. Honestly though, I'm super glad that they took their time with it because it is kind of exactly how I was hoping the A7S III would be, and I'm really hoping it holds up in my real world shooting scenarios. So in today's video, we're going to go over my favorite custom settings for these Sony Alpha cameras. Also, a ton of stuff has changed in the menu, so if you came from a previous Sony model, this video will hopefully be helpful in getting you more familiar with the menu system of this camera. So let's get started. My name's Dustin, your video tour guide, and please keep your arms and legs inside your chairs at all times. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Real quick before we get started, if you have any questions about the A7S III or just other camera related content in general, feel free to come pop into my Twitch chat. I'd be more than happy to answer some questions, give suggestions, or even feedback on your content if you're curious what my thoughts may be. There's a link down in the description. All right, so the first thing we're going to set up on the A7S III is the custom buttons. Keep in mind guys, these are the custom buttons that work for me. They don't change a ton after I set them up, but if I notice I'm using something on the camera more or something less, I do change these custom settings from time to time. Also, what works for me may not work for you, but like I mentioned before, this is a good place to start and you can make changes as needed to fit your shooting style. To get your custom buttons set up, go to Menu, down to the yellow menu, Option 3, and go to the second custom key setting, which is for shooting in video mode. Number 1 is your scroll wheel, which I like to change to ISO. To me, it's just easier to change on the fly. And then for number 2, I like to change this to AF/MF selector hold. What this does is it makes it so when I hold down this button, it'll flip to manual focus and I can adjust my focus how I like, then let go when I want to go back into autofocus. Autofocus is incredible on this camera, but even still, there are times I like to flip it into manual in order to achieve what I want in the shot. Number 4, we're going to change to picture profile. Most things I like to shoot in log, but I do switch to other profiles sometimes when I'm filming something like one of these YouTube videos or just my dogs or something like that. For number 5, we'll change to display my menu. We're going to set up our menu a little later in the video. Basically, we're going to set up things in that menu that you can't set up on a custom button that you might need very often while you're shooting. On the next one, we're going to change number 2 to focus magnifier. This just makes it easier to punch in and grab focus. And then for number 5, we'll change to audio rec level. This will allow us to change our audio level on the fly even when you're recording. On the last one we'll change number 2 to white balance. All right, now let's set up the FN menu settings. To get there, go to the same place we were in the yellow menu, then choose FN menu settings. When you click that, there's 2 options, one for photo mode and one for video mode. I'm just going to give you setup for video mode. For the top left, I like to have peaking as toggle on and off since I don't always need it, but sometimes it's nice to just be able to flip on when I'm in manual. Right next to it, we'll have focus mode. Some of the lenses I have for the A7S III don't have an AF/MF switch on the lens. So when that happens and I can't hold down the button I set up earlier, I'll just switch it into fully manual. The next is focus area. I usually only leave this in wide, but sometimes I will rarely switch it over into the spot mode and use that. The next is face/eye priority. This one is just useful if you want to turn off the focus to prioritize the face. Typically, it does a pretty good job knowing where I want it to focus, even with that on, but again, sometimes you just gotta turn it off. The next is setting the tracking from human to animal. I mostly just have this here so I can track my dogs. I don't typically do shoots with animals, but one time I turned this on and I forgot to turn it off. I was filming a wedding and for some reason I felt like the autofocus was doing weird things, and that was when I remembered I forgot to turn that off, and since then I've always had it on a setting I can get to quickly. Then the last one on this row is AF transition speed, and right below it, we're going to set AF subject shift sensitivity. There's some really cool things you can do on the settings with this autofocus, which I think I'm going to test all the settings in an upcoming video. Right next to it, we're going to have steady shot. Typically, I just leave this on standard, but I'm thinking the active mode may come in handy when I'm shooting more shaky shots. Next is S&Q frame rate. Typically, I don't really use S&Q, but sometimes I like to see what something will look like in slow-mo in camera. So in those scenarios, I will turn on S&Q, and this is just a quick way to adjust your frame rate. The next is Gamma Display Assist. You'll probably just leave this in auto, but I like to have it there just in case I want to change it manually when I'm in a different picture profile. Next, we have Marker Display. Marker Display is a guide for you if you plan to change your aspect ratio in post. It'll give you an idea where your cutoff is and make it easier to frame for that specific aspect ratio. Then lastly, we have Zebras. You want to set up your Zebras, and there's a few different ways you can set them up. It just kind of depends on what your shooting style is. You can set them up to expose for skin tone or clipping, or if you want to expose for a certain amount of stops over. I don't exactly know what I'm going to do, and I think I'll cover that in a future video. There's a few more things I like to change. Go back to the yellow menu and go to number 6 and select Finder/Monitor to monitor. This just turns off the viewfinder. I never use the viewfinder unless I'm shooting photos, but usually I'll shoot video, so that's why I prefer it to just be on the Finder. Once that is done, change the monitor brightness to sunny weather. This will affect battery life, but it makes it much easier to see the monitor in all lighting conditions. Then the next one is display quality, and change that to high. This will also affect battery life, but it'll help with being able to tell if your image is in focus when you're in manual. Lastly, we need to set up the My menu. The reason I like to set this on a custom button is because I know when I press that button, it's going to take me to certain settings that I like to get to quickly. To set up this menu, go to the gray menu, My Menu Settings, and click Add Item. The first one I'm going to put here is in the red menu, image quality, then file format with the video icon. The reason I want this to be at the top of my menu setting is so I can switch between the different codecs and resolutions quickly. Then right below that, we want to put movie settings so we can switch between the different frame rates and settings as well. The next setting I'm going to add to this menu is APS-C/Super 35 shooting. There is something to keep in mind with this setting. When you're in 4K, you can't actually go to APS-C mode. This is a limitation because of the amount of megapixels on the sensor. To get 4K video, you need 12 megapixels. So if you punched in on the sensor, you effectively just can't get 4K in that mode. There may be a way around this, but I have to do a little more experimenting before I can say it works. The next one I'm going to add is anti-flicker shoot. All this does is help with flickering when you can't match the shutter speed of some flickering lights in your image. The next one I'm going to add is the send to smartphone function. I know that this isn't a photo camera, so to say, but because of how good the autofocus is, I'll probably still be using it to take photos on occasion, and when I do, a lot of the times I just like to send it to my phone. The last setting we're going to add here is format, and that's pretty straightforward. It just makes it easier to format the card when you need to. That's everything. I'm super excited to get more familiar with this camera and really dig deep into its settings to see what it can really do. I've also got plans to compare the A7S III to my Panasonic S1H, so if you're interested in that, stay tuned. Also, if you want to join a community of like-minded people, I just launched a Discord channel, so feel free to pop in there to ask questions and get more involved with the community if you like. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a triple thumbs up, and if you support what I do, be sure to check out the affiliate links in the description, because if you buy something off those links, I get a kickback. You can also just support the channel by hitting the subscribe button and the bell button if you like to be notified of future uploads. Until then though, happy filming.